Hey y'all, welcome back. My name is Crystal, and I've got another Fiberartsy Reads book chat video for you today, and I'm gonna wrap up the rest of the books that I read here in June. So a couple of weeks worth of books, and just to start off, June was a freaking amazing reading month for me. I read 24 things. That's a lot. That's a lot. And I pretty much enjoyed everything. So let's see, I will link the first part of June down below just in case you want to catch up with that. Otherwise, let's get started. And again, I've got my list. Otherwise, I will forget something because that is me. So let's start it off. Okay, yeah. Also, if you remember, I was doing the Free Your Shelf-a-thon, and I had really fun doing that. It was basically to read the books that you already owned. And so I'd come up to the prompt to read, that was to read the oldest ebook that you have. And I had originally picked Infinity Lost. I started that one and was like, no, I don't want to read this. So I'm never going to read that book. It's fine. And then I picked the next oldest ebook, Sleeping Embers of an Ordinary Mind, or something like that. I didn't like that one either. And I realized I'd actually started reading that one before and stopped. So this is 2 times now trying to read that book. I'm done with that one too. So I ended up with the third oldest ebook, which was The Light of the Fireflies by Paul Penn. I can't read my own writing. And this is translated by Simon Bruni. I liked the idea of this book. It was, we've got this family that we meet in the beginning, and they are living in a basement. I'm not sure why they're living in a basement, but it's a whole family, a mom, dad, 3 kids, even dear old grandmother is down there. And you're like, why are they, gosh, why are they down there? Some kind of apocalyptic event, the world unlivable, I don't know. What is what's going on, right? So basically, the story is, of course, we figure out what happens and why they're living in this basement of this house and all this stuff. And the main perspective is from the youngest kid's point of view, and it was fine. I enjoyed that part and getting to know the family members. The dad was kind of a mean guy, mom was a bit aloof, and there were rooms that you couldn't go to in the basement, like the parents' bedroom you couldn't go to, it was always locked and that kind of thing. And there was some mystery being built and all that. The writing was great. I was really enjoying it. And then we get to the reason of why they're down in the basement, and I was like, you lost me there. You lost me there. I don't know if anyone's ever going to read this book, but basically it used this person has a disability, he has a brain injury, so he obviously just did something bad because he just can't control himself. And bleh. So, yeah, I didn't like it. I ended up giving the book 2 stars. I finished it because I really just wanted to see how it finished out. The ending was like, ugh. So yeah. But hey, that book is now off my list. I've read it, hated it, moved on. So I appreciate that about the Free Your Shelf-a-thon. So, but I wouldn't recommend it. I didn't like it. But then I read a book that I really liked, and I knew I was going to like it, and that's The Between by Tananarive Due. This is now my 3rd book by her, and I loved this one too. I loved the other ones, and this one I did also use for Free Your Shelf-a-thon, the favorite trope. And I do like when books have dream sequences, and this one has some dream sequences. And so we follow at the very beginning of the book, there's a young boy, and he lives with his grandmother, and they were at the beach one day, and the young boy gets pulled out by the current, and his grandmother saves him from drowning, but while doing so, she drowns herself. And so now she's gone. His parents were already gone. Now his grandmother's gone. He goes to has to live with someone else. But some years later, and this is, I don't know, many years later, he has a family of his own now with his own 2 children. He begins to have these dreams, and he's just sort of remembering this incident that happened with his grandmother. And he's seeing things, and time is doing kind of strange things, and it's beginning to question, was I supposed to die that day? Is death coming back for me? And it was really good. Classic Tananarive Due. She can write the hell out of a character. She just builds them right on up. You are so invested in their story, and it was the same in this instance. We loved seeing Hilton as a kid, seeing him grow up, seeing him deal with this, whatever he was dealing with. What's going on? Like, am I cheating death? Will I inevitably die? What the hell is going on here? And it was really good. And they were also, his wife was a judge in the area. This takes place in Florida. And she is getting like threats from like former, someone that she put away earlier, like in a former case. And they're getting all these racist threats, and that gets really tense also. But perhaps that's all linked in to what is happening to Hilton as well. Yeah, it's really, really good. If you've not read anything by Tananarive Due, you must. I'm feel ashamed that I haven't read anything until a couple of years ago by her, so. But I can make up for that now. And this was really wonderful. I ended up 4 stars on that one. All right. And then another of the Free Your Shelf-a-thon prompts was to read a gifted book. And I ended up reading Suspicious Minds by Gwenda Bond. This is part of the Stranger Things books. There's a few of them out now, along with some like comics and stuff. This is more of a prequel to season 1 of Stranger Things, and we're meeting our dear friend here, yeah. And this follows Terry, Eleven's mom, basically, Terry. And so if you've seen Stranger Things, and we do get a little glimpse of what happened with her in the series, but this just goes much deeper. We see her as she's in college and like having friends, and how she gets signed up for these medical trials that gets her involved with this guy, and how she gets intertwined with the Hawkins lab and all of that. Dr. Brenner, right? I tried to remember his name. I was drawing a blank there for a minute. And yeah, what was the point of the experiments? All this kind of stuff. And I mean, it was fine. I'm not gonna say it's like the best thing I've ever read. I think if you're a fan of the show and are interested in learning about what happened before, you would maybe enjoy it. It kind of is what it is, kind of books. But I enjoyed it for what it was. Gave it 3 stars. It was fine. It definitely, like I said, added more depth to the overall world of Stranger Things, which I love. I don't even care. I love Stranger Things, and so this is why I bought this book, or why it was given to me. This is for the gifted book prompt, and yeah, it wasn't like amazing, but it was fun. How about that? So let's see. Then I listened to an audiobook, and that is The Wilds by Julia Elliott, excuse me. And let's see. This was narrated by Susan Bennett and Lori Gardner. So this is a short story collection. short story collection. The two narrators like switched stories, and these stories were really, for the most part, I really liked them a lot. Really fantastic writing here. I don't remember who, I saw this in someone's channel. It was recommended. I don't remember now who it was. Just went on a list and like, oh, that sounds good. Let's write it down, kind of thing, right? And it's a lot of them were very strange. So if you like some weird, this definitely has some weird stuff going on in it, and a lot of those stories. And I just, don't really know much else to say because they're short stories and everyone was different. But I really enjoyed, all of them, to be honest. And I loved the writing. It was just my level of strange. And I would definitely read more by this author. Ended up with 4 stars on this one. Really enjoyed this collection, so I recommend it. All right. I then continued on with reading the Cinder Comics. So I think in my first wrap up, I had read books 1 through 4. I finished it out with 5 and 6. And holy moly. These two were fantastic. Book 5, we learned a lot in this one. We learned a lot of the history about the harvesters and robot kind. As a refresher, this is a science fiction graphic novel series, or comic series, and once upon a time, these large robot things came in and annihilated a lot of folks out of this sort of galaxy. And it sort of picks up some years later with trying to kind of reestablish and all this stuff. And there's these rebel robots that are still hanging out there. Most of the robots were killed or, gotten disposed of, and things like that. And the history, the future of robot kind, and possibly say humankind, but there are a lot of different alien races in this comic, depend on little Tim 21, who's a little companion robot who wakes up in episode 1. If that makes sense. But anyway, like I said, issue 5, or volume 5, we learned a lot. And then it ended with volume 6. Oh man, what an ending. I really love this entire series. I think I 5-starred them all. The artwork is so amazing. I've said it before. I can show you on the back here. It is this beautiful watercolor. There's a minimalist to it. This here is just a negative space, right? The hand isn't even filled in at all. So there's just, like I said, this minimal quality to it that I just loved. I loved throughout this whole book. And this was fantastic, and it sets up, dear friends, a Cinder, which is a sort of now a follow-up. I went and bought all the volumes that they have now, volumes 1 through 3. I'm going to dig into these soon. This picks up 10 years later after the events of book 6 of Cinder. I've got to see where this goes. I got to see where it goes. And so I'm really excited about that. So let me say that this is written by Jeff Lemire. The artwork is by Dustin Nguyen. It's so good, y'all. I'm so glad I finally finished that. All right. And from that, I moved into a middle grade story, Howl's Moving Castle. Now, I had also sort of participated in the Strange-a-thon, which is just a week-long readathon. And I also used this book for one of those prompts, which was which one was it? Oh, an odd setting, because this is sort of a fantasy world. And then I also used it for the new to you author prompt for Free Your Shelf-a-thon. So 2 for there. But a lot of people know what this book is about. I've not read it, not read anything by this author. And this was so much fun, a lot of whimsy. There's magic, of course. There's a moving castle. There's witches and demons. This was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad to have finally read this one. I listened to the audiobook for it, actually, and it was really well done. It was super fantastic. And essentially we've got this little girl in the beginning of the book. She's not a little girl. She's maybe a teenager. And something happens in her family, and she's sort of willed almost, a hat shop. And so she's just working away in the hat shop. And one day this witch comes in and just bewitches her because she's mad, and she turns our Sophie, is the little girl's name, into an old lady, right? And she's like, well, gosh, I can't stay here because I'm an old lady. Nobody knows what I am, who I am. And so she takes off, gonna leave town. She comes across Howl's castle. Now everybody knows who Howl is. He's a magician, and his castle moves around. And she sort of inserts herself into Howl's life. Howl also has a little apprentice and a demon in his fireplace. And it was just really fun. It was really fun. So, glad to have finally read that. And gave it 4 stars. It was fun. Alrighty. And from that to The Worm and His Kings by Hailey Piper. Quite the transition there. This one I also, for your shelf, I just used for the Reader's Choice prompt. And then for the Strangeathon, I used for the LGBTQ+I representation. And this book was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I flippin' loved it. I loved it a lot. And, okay, how to explain this one? Because it's a short one, so I don't get too involved, but okay, it takes place in 1990 in New York City. We meet this girl, this woman named Monique. Monique is looking for Donna. Donna has gone missing. Donna is her girlfriend. What has happened to Donna, we don't know. But she is looking for her because she just believes that she was taken, that she's missing, And other people who have, now, back up. Monique is living sort of on the fringe of society. They are homeless, they are living kind of down in subway tunnels and things like that. And there are other women that have now gone missing from, the tunnels and things like that. Something is taking these women. But what is it? Some sort of creature, yeah? And so Monique decides one day to follow the creature because she sees it taking someone. And this leads us down and down and down to the depths, where we learn all about the Worm and His Kings and basically what the hell is going on. This is a cosmic horror. So if that's not your thing, you may not jive with this, but I jived. I jove. What's the plural of jive? I don't know. I really liked this one. Again, it's just this level of strange and weird that I love. And this was fantastic. So, highly recommend. Again, if you like that sort of thing, if you like cosmic horror, this was fantastic. Loved it. Alrighty. Before I go any further, actually, I'm going to talk about this DNF. Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz-Zafón. Yeah, I started reading this one, and I was bored. I didn't want to read it anymore. I don't think I'll ever read it. So I'm letting it go. And that's fine. It's fine. But on to something good. I listened to the audiobook for In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. This is a classic piece of nonfiction. I've had this on my shelf. I don't know how long I've had this book on my shelf. I mean, a long time. Years and years and years. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. It's just one of those things. Sometimes you just don't know why you do the things you do. It's fine. But I said, let me put the audiobook on hold. Maybe that'll help me get through it, right? And oh my gosh, this was really fantastic. Sometimes things are classics for a reason, right? It's because they're really good. And this, of course, is a nonfiction story about the members of the Clutter family in Kansas that were just brutally murdered in the middle of the night. And their murders were unsolved for quite a long time. And this basically, Truman Capote basically reconstructs everything for us. So, and here in the beginning, we learn about the Clutters. Who were they? What kind of people were they like? What was the town like that they lived in? That kind of thing. And we also learn about the two men that ended up being convicted of their murders. But we learn a bit about their early story too. Kind of what were they like? What were they doing? That kind of thing. And then it goes like right into the story of trying to track down who murdered them. And then once they basically found these two guys, it documents what happened, why they did what they did, how they did what they did. But it does go into detail about what happened to the Clutter family. It was two children and then the mother and the father. Pretty brutal for sure. This took place, what was the year again? 1959. And it was really well done. It was written in a way that felt like just reading a fiction novel. It pulled you right in, and you just had to keep reading to figure out what happened, even if you know what's going on, because it is a true story. But it was really wonderfully written with really fantastic detail, but not too over the top. It wasn't too what's the word I'm looking for? Too much attention paid to the killers, that kind of thing. It didn't paint them in some particular light. It humanized, of course, the Clutters. I think sometimes, a lot of the times, the victims can be sort of othered in a way in nonfiction. But this was fantastic. Yeah, really glad that I finally got to that. That was a win for sure. And the audiobook was done really well. The narrator was Scott Brick, who is one of my favorite narrators for audiobooks. His voice, oh my gosh, he can read me anything. I love his narration, so that made it even better. All right, so let's see. The prompt for Free Your Shelf-a-thon that I think was the last one that I needed to fill was the Read on the Cover prompt. Now, I had originally planned on reading this one, Fairest Flesh by K.P. Kulski. I started this one, dear friends, and I just could not get into it. I got to about chapter 6 or so. I don't know. This is a historical horror, and I think I'm not in the mood for it right now. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's the writing or anything. I wasn't in the mood for it. So I'll go back to that at some other point. I'm not going to DNF it forever. I'm DNFing it right now. Perhaps it feels a bit more of a winter book. I don't know, but I still had a couple of days left of the month, and I needed a book with Read on the Cover. And so when all else fails, pulled out a Goosebumps book, and this one definitely has some Read on the Cover. This is Say Cheese and Die by our dear old friend R.L. Stine. This is number Goosebumps 4, I believe. Are they numbered? No, I want to say it's number 4. I don't really know. Now I missed the whole Goosebumps train when they started coming out. I was too old by then. I was reading Stephen King already. But my younger sister, who's 4 years younger than me, loved Goosebumps, so she probably still has her whole entire collection. But yeah, I don't know. I just never read them, and so whenever I see one at a thrift store, I pick one up now just to kind of give it a try, see what I missed out on, and this one was actually really fun. I think it's only the second one I've gotten to. But we got this young group of kids. They're at the summer, school's out, so this is a perfect summertime read. They're bored, of course, and so of course they let's go explore the old abandoned decrepit house in the neighborhood, because every town has that old decrepit house, right? Right. So they do. And one of the guys, who is this Greg, finds this camera while they're snooping around, and he ends up taking the camera. And as they start using the camera, the pictures that come out of the camera are not the picture that he was taking. If that makes sense. And then things start happening to his family and friends of whose picture they take, whose picture he takes. Oh my gosh, I think I made that complicated. Anyway, so is this camera predicting these events or causing them? Dun dun dun. And we find that out in this book. There's also this really creepy dude that he's like a homeless guy that everybody calls Spidey. And he's hangs out in this old abandoned house, of course. And he's chasing after them over this camera. And that stuff was actually pretty spooky. Who's this creep, So this one was actually pretty good. I gave it 4 stars because it was a lot of fun. So say cheese and die. Alright. I had an audiobook hold come in next for Beartown by Fredrik Backman. This was narrated by Marin Ireland. Lord, can't speak right now. And this was fantastic. Of course, I have been hearing about Beartown for years now. Everybody loves it. It's just one of those books. You know how you do. You say, gosh, I need to read that. I need to read it. 3 years later, you still haven't read it, right? And so I said, let me just pull up the audiobook. So I put it on hold. It finally came in. And yeah, this was just as fantastic as everyone says. And really just wonderfully written. This is a story, if you don't know. This is a small town. And this is a translated book. I did not write the translator down. I apologize. But this is a small town. And like a lot of small towns, it doesn't have much going on, right? There's not much to do. It's the kind of town you get stuck in. I think a lot of us are probably familiar with those types of towns. Maybe we grew up in those sorts of towns. And the only thing that really gives people hope or something to look forward to or something fun to do is hockey. They've got this local club hockey team, the Bears, that just gives them life, gives them something to look forward to. And if you play for this hockey team, and they're kids, they're there's 2 levels. There's the 15, the younger teenagers, and then there's the older teenagers kind of thing. So if you play for this team, woo boy, watch out. You can get away with pretty much anything. These kids are just treated like royalty in this town. And you see that develop through this beginning part of the story of how when they go to school, how they're treated, and they're bullies a lot to younger kids, and talk back and are very rude to teachers even, and things like that, just to get away with a lot. They get away with a lot because they are winners. Yeah. This whole sort of jock culture. Yeah. But what happens when one of these star players is accused of raping a girl? This is what we find out. The town takes sides, and it's not pretty. It goes to some kind of dark places, despicable places. Because of course, not everyone's on the girl's side, yeah. Because this guy's a star player. Why would he do that? Yeah. And I thought these sort of topics that were brought up in here about, because all of this rings very true. I think especially if you live in a small town, and especially if sports are a sort of forefront in your town, I think this is something that would absolutely happen in real life. And I think the questions that this book raises are very important. And it was just really wonderfully written. The characters, gosh, there are a lot in here because there's a lot of the kids, there's adults in the town. I mean, there's a lot going on, but they're all written very well, and you can really visualize them in your minds, and I love that. I love when you get a good character, Even the town itself was very visualized in my head, and I could just picture Beartown. I could figure out what it looks like, and it really came to life on the page. And so if, like me, you haven't read this one yet, it could be because for no reason at all. Definitely pick it up, give it a go. The audiobook was really wonderful. I think it's definitely worth a read. just know that it talks about rape and things like that. So a lot of victim blaming in it too. But it was very, very well done. So glad I finally got to that one as well. And then let's see. Oh, I read Unburied, a collection of queer dark fiction. This is a anthology. It was edited by Rowland. This is another book that I heard about over on Jay Maddox's channel. I seem to get a lot of recommendations from him, so go check him out. And this is, just like it says, it's a collection of short stories written by queer authors. A lot of the characters in the stories are queer, and I liked really the bulk of these stories. And like I said, it's just dark fiction. It's not all necessarily horror. There's some that are kind of fantastical elements, and some that are kind of thrillery. Really diverse mix of genre and style. And overall, again, really enjoyed it. So highly recommend if you're looking for some new authors. I always think, anthologies are a great way to test out new authors, not Arthurs. Oh my gosh, authors. And yeah, this one was very good. So 4 stars, highly recommend it. Check it out. All right. I've got one more book, you guys. I told you I read 20 more things. Oh my gosh. But I finally finished Memories of Ice by Stine Erickson with like a day to go in the month. And woof, you guys. Okay, book 3 and the Malzahn, Book of the Fallen. Y'all know I'm reading this with Jason over at Jason's Weird Reads. We are slowly making our way through this. He had finished this one, I don't know, like a month ago though. Woof. I gave this one 5 stars. This one was fantastic. Gosh, how do you even explain this? So this one picks up. So we've got Gardens of the Moon, right? That was book 1. This book has a lot of those same characters from Gardens of the Moon in it. Because Dead House Gates, which is book 2, is really sort of the same timeline as the events of Memories of Ice. It just takes place in a whole different part of this world, right? So those stories are taking place at the same time, but this one has those characters that we met in Gardens of the Moon. Plus, of course, we meet a whole bunch more because these stories have like 1,000,000,001 characters. But whereas in Gardens of the Moon, some of these characters were like against each other, here they all come together to defeat, or to try to defeat, or whatever, this dude named the Pantheon, yeah? Because this guy has got himself a following. And it's a following, you guys. We've got some cannibalism going on in here. Yeah. I'm always a little bit amazed by how far Erickson takes these stories. He's very, very graphic with his war violence. There's a lot of battle scenes also in here. So, if you don't like battle stuff, maybe this isn't the series for you because it's pretty battle heavy. And it's brutal. Like, it's blood and guts. And like I said, this one has cannibalism. I mean, we got all kinds of stuff going on here. There's these things called the I can't remember the name, what they're called. The Chavel. And they're like basically like big dinosaur looking lizard things that have swords for arms that just shred people. You guys, I can't even make this stuff up. It was fantastic. And it was an awesome way to end the month. I'm going to move on to book 4 because if I don't, I'm going to lose my momentum. But we learn a lot in this book too that I think furthers our sort of overall general story. And I'm excited and I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. Loved it. And oh my gosh, this is the longest video ever. I think this is it. I'm excited. I had a really fantastic reading month in June. What did you read in June? What was your favorite? I would love to know. Did you read any of these books? Did you do for your shelf-a-thon? Did you have success with reading books off your shelf? I really did. I'm very happy about that. And that'll do it for me. I'm going to catch you guys in the next one. Happy July and happy reading. Deuces.